Science and medicine have come a long way during the last 50 years, and thanks to new technological advancement and medical discoveries, we now understand the human body well enough to treat and cure people of many diseases which would have killed us in the past. That being said, there are still lots we do not understand, and against all odds, some people have baffled doctors by somehow making miraculous recoveries from diseases or critical injuries which should have been impossible to recover from going by our current understanding of how the body works. Here are some of the most intriguing cases I have come across. Julie Spon. Julie Spon's problem started one fateful evening when she accidentally hit the back of her head on a shelf behind her dinner table. She fractured the temporal bone in the back of her head, leading to a significant brain bleed. This left Julie in tremendous pain and dealing with constant headaches, visual problems, inability to walk or even to sleep properly. She saw several leading specialists who all concluded that nothing could be done to cure or even ease her symptoms. She stayed this way for 13 years and became depressed as a result of losing all ability to enjoy life or to be at peace, as she was in constant tremendous pain. One day she saw a faith healer on TV and immediately felt a surge of positivity and peace. The healer was a former surgical anesthesiologist called Dr. Isam Nima. Julie felt like she had to see him, so her and her husband went to one of his healing services. As soon as Nima entered the room, Julie felt heat rushing through her back and knew something was going to change for her that day. Nima seems to heal people with the power of his prayer. Julie left the service that day completely pain-free. She could even walk to her car without the cane which she had become dependent on. This is one of many accounts of the healing powers of Isam Nima. Doctors could not explain how Julie was now completely symptom-free. The best explanation was that this was some kind of placebo effect, where Julie's body was somehow able to heal through her belief that she would be healed. So is this an example of a genuine divine miracle or a placebo effect? It's still pretty incredible whichever way you think about it. As I mentioned earlier, some people attribute miracle healings to the placebo effect, but that theory cannot explain this next case, which is why I've decided to include it. Ryan Hulick. Ryan Hulick was born with spina bifida, a serious birth defect which occurs when the bones of the spine don't form properly around part of the baby's spinal cord. There is currently no cure for this condition. Ryan's parents decided to take him to see a Venezuelan woman called Maria Esperanza on one of her frequent trips to America. Maria was a well-known Catholic spiritual healer who has allegedly cured many people of various health problems. Maria approached Ryan and seemed to know exactly what was wrong with him despite having no prior knowledge of the family. She said Ryan would be healed in 3 parts, and this first part was happening right now. After the second visit from Maria, Ryan's symptoms improved dramatically, to the point where a visiting neurologist had to double-check he was visiting the same child. Ryan still had one more healing to go through. By the end of the 3rd healing, Ryan's parents noticed instant further improvements to Ryan's strength and ability throughout his body, and soon after returning home, Ryan was now fully able to walk. The doctors who first diagnosed the condition were stunned. This particular story cannot be attributed to the placebo effect, as Ryan was too young to understand what was happening to him. Taylor Hale. Taylor Hale was a happy and healthy cheerleader until she had a tragic accident in September 2011. She accidentally fell off of her friend's car bonnet and badly hit the back of her head on the concrete pavement. She was completely unconscious. Her friends called an ambulance and she was rushed to the intensive care unit of Des Moines Blank Children's Hospital. Doctors had to put her in a medically induced coma and told her family that only time would tell if she would ever be able to walk, talk, or eat without a feeding tube. After several days, Taylor's condition unfortunately became worse as she suffered a brain hemorrhage. Part of her brain had even slipped down towards the spinal cord. This is considered as irreversible damage and almost always fatal. Medics had to work really hard to keep her alive. Taylor's devastated family were told that she was now completely brain dead and they should start considering organ donations and funeral arrangements. They decided to switch off the life support machine. During their final hours with Taylor, Jeff Stickle, a family friend, had decided to visit as he said he felt moved by God to come and pray with the family. Jeff was told that Taylor had no hope, but they allowed him to pray with her anyway. He put his hand on Taylor and prayed to God to spare her life. Later that day, the life support machine was switched off, and this is when something amazing happened. Instead of flatlining as expected, Taylor tried to take a gasp of air. She was put back on the life support machine and showed clear signs of improvement such as fluttering eyelids, trying to talk, and the brain monitor showed much more activity. Miraculously, Taylor went on to make a full recovery after months of physiotherapy and retraining on how to walk, talk, and even eat. She is still trying to recover long-term memories and has certain struggles, but she has now successfully graduated from high school. Her parents consider Taylor's recovery as a definite mix of divine intervention combined with the efforts of the medical team involved. Eben Alexander. Eben Alexander is an American author and neurosurgeon. Having been a qualified neurosurgeon for 20 years, Eben thought he had a pretty thorough understanding of the human brain. But in November 2008, he had an experience which he claims has destroyed the current understanding of the brain and its relationship to human consciousness. Eben awoke in the early hours of the morning with severe back and headache. Within 3 hours, he was having grand mal seizures and slipping into a coma. It was discovered that Eben had contracted a very rare and aggressive strain of bacterial meningitis. Eben claims that the infection pretty much destroyed a part of his brain called the neocortex. He describes this part of the brain as the part which makes us human, and he should have been left with only very basic brain functioning. Despite being left in a coma with severe neocortex damage, Eben went on to have a near-death experience and seemed to travel through different spiritual realms, each one seeming to be a higher and more divine dimension than the previous one. His account of what he says is very complex and would take too long to describe fully here, so I would suggest watching one of his lectures if you are interested in hearing the whole story. He admits that his limited brain activity could have been capable of experiencing the first dimension he saw, which he describes as an earthworm-like existence, where he had no memory of who he was, or any awareness of being or having been a human. He says that the other more wonderful and complex realms he travelled through could not have been his imagination due to the extent of the brain damage. Eben claims that the second part of the miracle came in his complete recovery. The survival rate of this type of meningitis is very low, and people who suffer a large amount of damage to the neocortex are usually left not being able to walk, talk, or do anything that requires complex brain functioning. Now, Eben's story has been disputed by the scientific world, so I'll leave it up to you to look into his claims and decide if you think he really did have a real out-of-body experience and miracle recovery, or if he just believes that he did. I don't have the name of the person in this last story. I came across it while reading a BBC article on spontaneous remission in cancer patients. The 74-year-old woman in question had been admitted to hospital with a severe and angry red and purple rash covering her lower leg. Doctors did some tests and confirmed she had a type of skin cancer called carcinoma. The cancer was so advanced that they knew radiotherapy would not work and the tumours could not be dug out. They thought that amputating her leg would be her only chance, but they were reluctant to do this due to her age. The doctors waited, trying to decide what to do, when all of a sudden the tumours began to shrink and disappear without any treatment. The doctors were amazed as they continued to watch the cancer disappear, and eventually she was completely cancer-free. The woman claimed it was a miracle from God, as she had kissed a religious relic just before the healing started. Obviously the doctors didn't agree, but there is some very interesting research into people who have been healed of cancer without receiving any treatment. You can find a link to this BBC article in the description below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next Mystery Sphere video.